you want to run anything up tempo, then obviously he would be at least someone on the radar. We're now joined by Justin Jackson, writes for the Dominion Post, covers West Virginia tonight, or in about an hour. In fact, West Virginia hosts Baylor. Justin, thanks for your time and weathering that storm, literally, and also the game this afternoon. Where is West Virginia? I know they got hammered by Kansas. Where are they right now, in your opinion, as a basketball team? What is right now not going very well, and what is their strength? And I know Sherman is one of those strengths.
Well, Sherman is probably the strength for West Virginia, but he is playing at less than full strength. 2 weeks ago, he was in COVID protocol, and of course, I had to set out the Texas game, and Texas walloped West Virginia in that game. And then he came back in time for the Oklahoma State game, and kind of hit some shots in the second half, but you could tell he wasn't at full strength. And then they go to Kansas, and like you said, Taz, I think he was like 1 of 9 shooting. He was really taken out of that game, and probably Kansas's defense had a lot to do with it. But obviously, he wasn't still feeling the effects of COVID, and so we'll kind of see where Taz is tonight. And of course, Baylor's defense can have a lot to say with that too. But without Taz, if he's not scoring 20, 25 points a game, it's going to be hard for West Virginia to compete against not only Baylor, but against a lot of teams in the Big 12 because, he's their one guy that they look to.
Well, this West Virginia team doesn't have, like you said, the one guy they look to, but they're not scoring a lot outside of him. And why do you think that is? Do they just not have shooters, or is this a developmental issue that they're just not there yet under Huggy Bear, or what's going on?
Well, they've got a couple of other shooters. Sean McNeil, who's probably their step in, shoot from outside kind of guy. Jalen Bridges is their wing, and he can kind of. He prefers to shoot from the outside, but he's also been shown the ability to go inside the last few games. He's actually started to rebound. West Virginia's biggest problem is they depend on those 3 guys, and they just, in terms of shooting, they just don't have anything else to go, to kind of complement those 3 guys. And so, if you get one of those guys off, or if one of them is injured, or and that it really sets them off. In past years, West Virginia's had that big guy down low. You probably remember Derek Culver from the last few years. They don't have that kind of presence. Their big guy right now, Isaiah Cottrell, was a 4-star freshman kid who got injured last year and didn't play, and so he's still kind of feeling his way through college basketball. He could become that kind of player down the road, maybe in a couple of years, but he's just not there yet. So it's basically the 3 outside shooters, and if they're not on, West Virginia struggles.
Looking at Baylor, I mean, they've had their struggles offensively here as of late as well, with their guard health being a problem. Defensively, how do you see West Virginia matching up with the Bears?
Well, I think, if you just, if you look at the game on paper, West Virginia could struggle to score because, Baylor's one of the better teams in the Big 12 as far as defensively. And what's really kind of impressed me with the Big 12 as a whole this year is that, 4 or 5 years ago, this was an offensive shootout kind of league, and now it's like a race to 60 or maybe a race to 70. And so, if you have a team that is struggling to score like West Virginia against a good defensive team like Baylor, whether Baylor's on the road or not, it doesn't look like the best matchup, unless, of course, you get that home cooking going and you get some shots to fall early and get some momentum. I think that would be the one way West Virginia could kind of stay in this game.
By the way, go ahead.
Yeah, given the weather, though, that you guys have going on,
you're gonna have
is the crowd going to be engaged there? I mean, there's going to be people?
Yeah, the storm hit here on Sunday, kind of late afternoon. And then by Monday, the roads were pretty good. It didn't quite hit here as, hardly. Pittsburgh got hammered, and West Virginia was like 80 miles south of Pittsburgh. And we didn't get quite as much as what Pittsburgh did. We got about 5-6 inches and some ice underneath that. But by Monday, the roads were clearing, and then certainly today, the roads were clear throughout town. And the Coliseum is sort of an on-campus arena, so a lot of the students are already here, and the crowd will start to file in probably another half an hour or so. I would say this is be a sellout, which would be about 14,000. But I would think it would be pretty close, 12,000 or so, I would guess.
Yeah, again, they're kind of used to that weather, even if it gets to be pretty bad. And when I was told that Baylor had their flight diverted to Pittsburgh, but they drove in and the roads were clear, that was last night. So you would imagine that the Mountaineers fans are, especially with the defending champions, but they would do that anyway, whether they're playing Kansas State or someone else. What's it like? We love Bob Huggins. We love covering him. He's sometimes in a post-game, first time I ever heard him, he's much different than I thought. I thought he'd be not brash or bombastic, but, kind of a little powerful. And yet he's a teddy bear, it seems like. That doesn't mean you don't get a glare or a couple of answers. What's it like to cover him?
Well, I tell you what, it's funny that you say that because, when West Virginia was in the Big East, the thing of it is, you see Bob Huggins on TV and you see this big, fiery, emotional guy, he's yelling and screaming. And then, of course, like you said, when you get the press conference afterwards, you got to put the mic up right up next to him or you're not going to hear him.
Yep.
People are really surprised by that. And, I've been amazed over the years that there are really, there's a number of different sides to Coach Huggins. And he's able to, the way he is during the game is certainly not the way he is off the court. And, the way he is in practice is certainly not the way he is at home. There are different facets, I guess might be the right word to describe how Coach Huggins is. It's kind of funny when West Virginia was first in the Big East a number of years ago, and people were kind of covering him for the first time. And kind of like you guys, they see this big guy yelling and screaming all the time, and then they get the post-game press conference and they find out that he's one of the nicest guys in the world, and it really caught a lot of people off guard.
Justin, you kind of mentioned this earlier, but what are your thoughts on what you've seen from the rest of the Big 12 this year? I mean, obviously Baylor's still very good despite taking a couple lumps. Tech got a big win, turnaround, got beat. Iowa State's there in the top 25. What have been your thoughts seeing the league and its strengths this year?
Yeah, Kansas State, Texas Tech beats Baylor and then beat Kansas and then beat Baylor and then turn around and loses to Kansas State. If anyone can figure out this Big 12 this year, good luck because, I haven't been able to do it. And the thing, like I said earlier, the thing that really impresses me is that, how quickly this league transformed itself from games that were in the, 80s and high 70s to games that are now in the 50s and 60s. And I think a lot of that credit maybe goes to Chris Beard, the job that he was doing at Texas Tech defensively, and now he's obviously moved on to Texas. I think once he kind of went in that 1 year, became a really good defensive team, and and took that Texas Tech team to the national championship game, I think a lot of the other Big 12 coaches kind of saw that and said, hey, we're going to have to gear up and get some athletes and get some more physical guys as opposed to like the wings that can just run and jump and that kind of thing. Not that the Big 12 still doesn't have guys like that, but this league is much more defensive than I ever thought. I mean, it kind of reminds me of the old Big East days that West Virginia said. Those games were basically a race to 55. And this league is a little bit more higher scoring than that, but it's a race to like 60, 65. And that's really surprised me. And to me, if you can play defense, I think you got a better chance to win in the postseason as opposed to being a team that has to go out there and just expect or have to survive off of scoring, 80 points tonight. If you can play some defense, I think you got a really good chance to win. And top to bottom, we got some good defensive teams throughout the Big 12.
Well, we saw what we mentioned Texas Tech did 3 years ago and what Baylor did the last couple of years, including winning it all. And we know what Kansas does, Texas with Beard now in Austin, and what West Virginia's always tried to do. Can they pressure as much without maybe some of the depth of some of the guys dinged up a little bit? Are they – because Baylor really has a Kinjo, and he's not 100%. He may – I don't even know he's there about his availability.
He is warming up, and Jeremy is warming up as well. I think they've got 12, 13 guys out there. Of course, they're not wearing the uniform, so it's kind of hard to tell if it's them or not. But West Virginia, a few years ago when they had Javon Carter and Sagabal Konate and that bunch, they were plus Virginia, and they were doing it for 40 minutes a game. This West Virginia team has done it in spurts, but Coach Huggins does not feel comfortable in doing it for long stretches of times. He does it more or so now to maybe try to catch a team off guard for a few possessions. And against a team like Baylor, I don't know if he'll even attempt it because he doesn't feel as comfortable doing it, extending that defense, for a whole full court, obviously like he did a few years ago. He hasn't – the teams that he's pressed this year have been some of the smaller non-conference teams, and it's kind of worked with them. But I think he's probably under the impression that it may not work against like a Kansas or against a Baylor. I don't even think he pressed him. I think maybe he did it against Kansas State a little bit, but against Big 12 competition, I would be surprised if they showed any full court pressure tonight.
Justin, thanks for jumping on with us. Be safe. Thanks for your time. It should be an entertaining game. West Virginia needs a win. Baylor needs a win, and thanks for your insight as well.
Hey, David, I really appreciate it. Anytime, man.
You too. That's Justin Jackson. The Dominion Post covers West Virginia. And again, now Jeremy Sohan warmed up in another game previously, and that doesn't mean, again, that he will play, but that is good news. And when I was talking to Pat Nunley, and he's next, I asked him, I said, did they both make the trip? He said, yeah, they're both here. And again, that doesn't mean they're both here to play, but that is at least somewhat good news that they're both at least warming up.
I'm not surprised that Akinjo's warming up. I'm surprised that Sohan's warming up.
Well, he did one other game. Well, remember that one time in football when Gary Bohannon was out and they was throwing passes and we saw the reports he was warming up? Yeah, that's one thing. And then another thing to play. If they could get Sohan back and Akinjo plays today, that gives you a little bit more of a feeling that they could take care of business in Morgantown. And speaking of which, Pat Nunley is there, former Baylor guard, Baylor color analyst on the radio. He'll join us next. Sick 'em, 365 Radio and 365 Sports.